With the Department of Architecture at Tsinghua University, Liang Sicheng was constructing an ideal system of education as he envisioned. The first group of national scholars appeared in China in 1948. These 81 scholars were divided into three groups: the humanities, the natural sciences, and biology. The two brothers, Liang Sicheng and Liang Siyong, were chosen for their outstanding contributions to architecture and archaeology, respectively. Their old friend, the philosopher Jin Yulin, was also selected. These academic elites had been nurtured amid great misery. Although years of war had not wiped out the greatness of their achievements, at the peaks of their careers, they had encountered momentous historical changes. The anniversary gathering took place just as the nationalist and communist armies were about to engage in a decisive battle.
Dearest Wilma and John, now that I feel that we have perhaps only a month or two to write freely to you all in the USA without postal service difficulties or whatever hitch there might be, I feel a bit choked or tongue-tied. Even this letter, I only hope that it will get to you before Christmas or for Christmas.
This letter was written by Lin Huiyin between November and December of 1948. It is the last letter John Fairbank and his wife would receive from the Liangs after 13 years of continuous correspondence. Before long, John Fairbank mailed them his recently published book, The United States and China, which crystallized his years of hard work. Published at an important juncture of Sino-U.S. relations, this book was regarded as a pioneering masterpiece and would be republished many times thereafter.
What I particularly admire in it is the way John puts Western things in Western terms and Chinese things in Chinese terms, and yet in the same Western language, intelligible both to the American who reads about China in his own tongue and the Chinese who reads about his own country in the other tongue. We all enjoy this enormously.
And that was a very important book. 60 years ago exactly. He says he wrote it in 1947, and now it's 2007. And it is, but at the time, it was a bombshell. I mean, Americans knew nothing about China. They had no reliable information about China. And Fairbank had a way of writing which was very accessible, very easy, 好读, easy to read, easy to understand. 好解.
Fairbank was trying to ensure that Americans and Chinese might understand each other better. And he couldn't make the Chinese understand America better, but he could try and make the Americans understand China better.
As a professor of history at Harvard University and a famous expert on China, in this book, Fairbank tried to communicate some basic information about China to the American public, which was completely unique at the time. First of all, China is a completely different country from the United States when it comes to its society, culture, and history. Second, if the United States wanted to implement a responsible and effective policy toward China, it first had to understand China. But at the end of 1948, the U.S. was facing an urgent issue. Was it really wise to support the nationalist government during the Civil War?
Ever since 1943, I had believed revolution was probably unavoidable in China. The collapsing urban economy, and the Kuomintang corruption and repression visible in 1945 to 46 confirmed me in this view. When the Marshall mediation began to collapse too, it became urgent to warn the American public not to back Chiang Kai-shek and his right Kuomintang, who were so busily digging their own graves and trying to pull us in with them.
I think that Fairbank's time in Chongqing influenced him greatly. And I think the sentiment he came away from China with at that time was that the salvation of China could not lie with the nationalists because they were too corrupt. And I think his attitude towards the Communist Party in China sometimes misunderstood. He certainly wasn't pro-communist, he wasn't a Marxist or anything like that. But I think he felt that the Chinese communists could not be worse and could be a lot better than the nationalists. And that was his general attitude. Like Chinese themselves, he hoped that China would regenerate, China would become great again. And if the communists could do that, then so be it. It was the Chinese people's choice.
As far as political views are concerned, I agree with John entirely this time. This means that I have come up closer to his views since we last argued in Chongqing. Or other, I have changed a bit by following the day-to-day issues at hand in the last 2 years, and I feel John is fairer too.
At the end of 1948, the fate of the nationalists was already sealed, and preparations to flee to Taiwan were underway. A group of cultural and academic elites were selected to join in the retreat.
那个时候，反正让我去劝两先不要走。
In Beiping, progressive students were engaged in the task of encouraging scholars to remain in China.
两先说我不会走的，他说我对北京，然后他们说了一个笑话，就是我也没东西可以工厂，我就这一辆小汽车，他要工厂就让他拿去，让蓝屏去做吧。说完他就哈哈大笑。
我父亲的绝对没有走的思想，他就是要留下来看，他觉得共产党反正要搞建设的。清华北大的教授啊，他是不怕共产，他认为各种党派都应该有自由，这个去宣传他们的学说吧。他并不认为这个很那个，他怕的就是说只许你有一种思想一种想法，不许他是喜欢这个。国民党当时就是说只许你相信国民党的那一套，而且把共产党说得非常可怕。反正当然我们也不是太听那些东西，但是对共产党还是有点戒心吧。
In 1949, the nationalists fled to Taiwan. And among the 81 academics, more than 60 chose to remain in the mainland. Only the Institute of Philology and the Academia Sinica, headed by Fu Xinyan, left for Taiwan.
History split our Peking friends into two groups. One sizable group would be in Taiwan after 1949, still refugees. Both groups of these Peking liberal intellectuals would continue to be kicked around by history, but they kept on trying to serve their country as best they could under a party dictatorship during civil war and revolution. None of them exactly won his battle, but neither did he quit. Eventually, someone will make a balance sheet for them all. They were a generation that met disaster, but not a lost generation by any means.
The relationship between China and the United States from 1945 to 1949 was subtle and complex, and a historical choice was underway. From then on, relations between these lifelong friends were to be completely severed. Not only would they be separated geographically, they would never hear from each other till the end of their lives. In December 1948, as Tsinghua was being liberated, Lin Huiyin sent her last letter to Fairbanks. Their daughter, who was attending Peking University, left Beiping before the city gates were closed.
回家我就听那家里好像哎呀非常热闹，人多极了。我一回家，大家就说你已经到了解放区了。
In mid-December 1948, Tsinghua University was the first to be liberated.
然后我就在清华住了1个多月，等这个解放军来解放。但是解放军不到大学里来，说是3大纪律8项注意，我们部队不干扰大学的这个学习的生活。所以当时我父亲就很感动，觉得这个解放军真不简单呐。
This is a picture of PLA soldiers sleeping in the streets of Shanghai after having taken over the city. In Shanghai, the troops impressed those people who had doubted the intentions of the new government. One of these was Chen Jiangxiang, an architectural planner who had returned from the UK. He told his family that if a party can educate its army in such a way, why should he doubt its ability to rebuild the country? Chen Jiangxiang ripped up his air ticket, and a few months later, together with Liang Sicheng, he would head up the planning work in the capital. Instead of sending its troops to the campus of Tsinghua University, the army sent an art troupe.
这个我倒记得我妈跟我一块儿去看，当时觉得哟。怎么这个军队还会演戏啊？这个而且就一看这个剧演的这个戏的这个文艺术跟这个思想水平都很不低，我妈就很感动。我妈他们是很注重，我妈是非常喜欢演戏剧的。然后看了以后，而且这个布景啊、化妆啊都非常的朴实，一点都不俗气。
3 days after the liberation of Tsinghua, a cadre came over and said that if the city were to be attacked, all measures should be taken to protect the cultural relics from destruction. I marked all the relics on a map and roughly described their historical and artistic value. In the past, I knew little of the Communist Party, but from that moment on, I truly loved it.
后来梁先自己也讲的嘛，对共产党的认识，他是从他的爱护历史遗产、爱护文物这方面认识共产党新政权，所以他决定不走。
It seemed that war would break out at any time, but in the end, it never occurred. On January 31st, 1949, Beiping was peacefully liberated. The city that Liang Sicheng loved so much was not harmed.
我们入城市的时候看到那个解放军呢，虽然威风凛凛的坐在大卡车上，吃荷枪实弹，但是一点都没有那种好像非常骄横、非常霸气，没有那种感觉。觉得还有这样一支军队啊，觉得怎么这个当兵的怎么会是这个样子？然后我就回到北大了，回到北大就当时也没有太大心思去上课。
It was at this time that their daughter's ideas began to change.
在学校的时候，觉得那些进步的同学，可能我知道他们怎么看我，觉得你是教授的小姐，看是比较逍遥的，那跟他们好像思想上不是那么接近，觉得他们多少有个圈圈，对我可能有些看法，所以我也不是很想去跟他们参加到他们当中去。 而且他们当然是地下党，做地下工作，他当然有很多秘密的东西，保密的东西，他很警惕吧，不是你随便什么阿狗都可以参加的。
After Beiping was liberated, the PLA was about to head south to liberate the rest of the country. Liang's daughter began to dream about joining the army.
本来我是很相信我的父母的，觉得什么事儿，只有他们告诉我的，我觉得都是对的。但是我觉得在解放军、共产党这个问题上，我父母了解的也不多，所以我觉得我自己必须参加部队去了解，这样我就决定去参军了。我决定以后，我就告诉我父母了，我父母当时是很不高兴，当时他很不愿意我走。
In 1945, after the victory in World War II, a doctor in Chongqing had warned Lin Huiyin had only 5 years.
我母亲哭啊，当时哭得很伤心。当然，我想他们两个人怎么都不让我走，这个时候。后来我就说，他说你又不懂你又不懂什么共产党的马列主义什么，你懂得什么？你又没有什么共产党的信念，你去是为了什么？我说我要了解共产党是什么样的人，我要了解解放军是什么样的人。我说我坐在家里我是不可能了解的。
The family reached an agreement whereby their daughter could join the army, but only if she agreed to return home after 1 year to complete her university studies. In April 1949, Liang Zhaibing joined an army group that was headed south. One month after she departed from Beiping, her father was appointed by the new government to be vice director of the Urban Planning Committee in the capital. Old Tong, congratulations on your liberation. Though I am several days late, I still greet you as one from an old area. In June 1949, Liang Sicheng wrote to his fellow student at Penn University, Tong Jun, and asked him to come north. Tsinghua was liberated 1 month prior to Beiping. From the first day of liberation, I was very impressed by the discipline in the army, and after meeting with various people from the Central Committee, their open-mindedness and realism really excited me and made me happy. This time, the Chinese Revolution has truly succeeded. Only the policies of China's Communist Party can save the corrupt, semi-colonial and semi-feudal China. The future is bright, and I really mean it, not mere jargon. Beiping has already settled down and begun its construction work. As the capital of New China, it needs many architects, and it also needs to educate many more architects. I hope that you will come north as soon as possible. Liang was busy recruiting professionals in urban planning and architecture for Beiping, which was soon to become the capital of the new republic. Tong Jie, Yang Tingba, Liu Dunzhen all had important tasks at the Department of Architecture at Nanjing Central University, so they could not go north. Among those who did go to Beijing, there was Dai Nianzi, who at the time was working in a Shanghai architectural firm, and later to become the chairman of China's Architectural Society, as well as vice minister of the Ministry for Environmental Protection in Urban and Rural Construction. There was also Zhang Bo, who was directing Quan, Chu, and Yang architects in Hong Kong. Later, Zhang Bo would be in charge of designing a series of major projects in China. In October 1949, soon after the establishment of New China, Chen Jiangxiang also arrived in Beijing with his family. The first time that I wrote to Liang Sicheng was to explain my situation and to offer my wish to work with him on urban planning in the capital. In his rapid reply, Liang warmly invited me to go to Beijing to work with him. In 1938, Chen Jiangxiang attended Liverpool University in the UK to study architecture. 6 years later, he enrolled at London University to study under Sir Patrick Abercrombie, the master of urban planning. In total, Chen had spent 8 years in the UK, where he was successful professionally and also active in many public affairs. He traveled widely in the UK advocating armed resistance against the Japanese invasion of China and became a popular social activist among the Chinese expatriates. After World War II, Sir Abercrombie became known for drafting the Great London Plan, an attempt to redesign and organically disperse the functions of the city centre so as to resolve the problems that many big cities encountered during their unlimited expansion, such as the rapid population growth, environmental degradation, and traffic congestion. This was the first time in the history of urban planning whereby a large plan was formulated to zone a city. Chen Jiangxiang, then only 30 years old, took part in the plan. Liang was awaiting this young designer to work with him on the great planning project in the capital. During the early 1930s, when Liang just returned from the United States, he worked with Zhang Rui to complete the material construction plan for the Tianjin Special City, his first attempt at urban planning. At the time, the new social system gave them confidence to initiate the urban planning project. In the early days after liberation, Liang and Lin pointed out the system of private land ownership in European and American cities hampered all attempts to improve the shape of the cities, causing cities to grow endlessly and without any plan, spreading like wild grass. The capitalist economic and political systems have caused serious harm to the cities. As they translated the book from the Soviet Union, the Liangs became familiar with the high level of planning and organization required during the reconstruction work, and they realized that the nationalization of land ownership would create a reliable foundation for all planning work. Socialism was heaven for planning workers. I met Liang and Lin Huiyin in Beijing. Even though it was my first time to meet them, I felt as if I had known them my whole life. To meet an understanding friend is the greatest joy in life, and I was so happy to have had such an opportunity.
就到部队去了。这一年，我的思想确实发生了非常大的变化，可以说是天翻地覆的变化。
Liang Zhaibing had been a student at the Department of Western Languages. She was assigned to the Xinhua News Agency in Hankou.
同志们，加油啊！
这4个人是宣传员，他们不但要走在大家的前面，还要鼓动大家前进的情绪。
我走的时候呢，我就很怕、很担心我这个。 我当时有一种预感，我说我去了以后啊，我的思想可能会发生变化。假如我的思想变了，我跟我妈妈可能我父亲母亲啊，在思想上可能会发生隔阂，因为他们毕竟是受这个西方教育的嘛，自由民主的这一套，他怎么能接受共产党的什么无产阶级专政啊，什么马列主义？我觉得跟他们恐怕他们接受不了这些东西。
Their daughter, after having joined the revolution, feared that because she had joined the great melting pot of the revolution, her parents would lag behind her in their thinking. Immediately after the first National Day celebrations of the new China in 1949, she received a letter from her father that dispelled all her worries. My dear child, I am writing this in a hurry because it is hard to find the time. Today is my 8th day of meetings with the CPPCC. 2 months ago, when I became involved in the designing and reconstruction work of the Huairen Tang in Zhongnanhai, I never could have imagined that I would be sitting here as a delegate. The participants include workers, peasant women, representatives of different parties, different nationalities. Before the meeting, 3 historical documents were drafted for discussion and edited through the exchange of ideas. After there were negotiations about the documents, they were rewritten based on the different viewpoints. This is real democracy. We are creating documents that truly represent the views of the people. Naturally, the documents were unanimously accepted immediately. A letter from her father that was read by all his daughter's companions and exhibited in the army.
是49年9月29号写的，就是第一个国庆节前2天写的。这封信，当时我感觉从这封信里，我感觉我父亲这个思想完全变了，就跟我走以前这完全不是一码事了。
For the last several weeks, I have been tied up in meetings all day, busy with both institutional and personnel matters. Mom is directing all the technical work, and she too is really busy. I feel sorry about that, and I am very concerned about her health. But the work spurs me on, step by step, and it completely exhilarates me. At the end of 1947, after a major operation to remove a kidney infected with tuberculosis, Lin Huiyin could finally get up from her sickbed. She eagerly took part in the reconstruction of China. She was appointed a member of both the Urban Planning Committee and the Committee for the Construction of the Monument to the People's Heroes, and she was also a representative to the First People's Congress of Beijing City. She created a course for new Tsinghua students on contemporary living quarters. 2 students from the 2nd class of the architecture department completed their graduate thesis under Lin's supervision.
我们每个礼拜差不多都要去一次啊，就是我们
汇报我们俩的论文。
论文
给我们谈情话的一点不像病人，
但是瘦得很，一点肉都没有。
给我们这个每一次，反正有的时候我们俩就在等他，去了以后啊，因为那时候我们俩也真傻，实现那
没有电话，那
实现也不能跟他打招呼，说去就去了，去了有时候他还刚刚起来，然后就咳嗽啊什么，就是他那个先把那个病那个难受劲儿过去，然后就跟我们两个谈话。
每次都这样吗？
几乎
差不多，因为说
然后谈不到完，他就得回去。
那个他虽然身体不好，可是他兴奋起来啊，可以滔滔不绝地跟你谈。虽然有时候谈得很辛苦，比如说他是肺病很重，所以他说多了以后啊，他这个地方就受不了，他有时候就要用手来捏着这个嗓子，然后说几又捏一下，就是很辛苦。
At the beginning of the 1950s, just after graduating from Tsinghua, Guan Zhaoyue took part in the designing of the monument to the people's heroes. Lin Huiyin was responsible for the design of the relief on the monument. For more than 1 month, Guan Zhaoyue would stay at the Liang's residence every day from 8 to 5 to work under Lin Huiyin's supervision on the drawings for the relief.
有一次啊，他让我画一个图案。当然我一个年轻人，我并没有很高的修养，所以我照着他给我的样子来画。画的时候，我觉得有点软，就是线条比较软。后来给他看，他说：“你这个是乾隆 taste， 就是你乾隆曲味，就是很俗的一种曲味。哦，乾隆 taste。”这种东西不能代表我们的英雄， 英雄纪念碑吗？这不能代表我们的英雄，他这样说。他马上又提到乾隆的其他的问题了，比如乾隆的书法也是这样一个味道，他就可以从这个本来是为了解决一个图案，是吧？那么一下就转到了乾隆的很多事情。那么乾隆当然他也不是简单的说乾隆，就讲到艺术的规律，在什么情况之下要出现什么样的艺术。后来他说你还是在盛唐时代的那个风格里头来找灵感。
In 1952, construction of the monument to the people's heroes began in earnest. Lin Huiyin researched the evolution of decorative art in Chinese architecture then. During the decade-long field survey of ancient architecture, she had already become enamored with the ancient grottos, sculptures, shrines, frescoes, and decor. The Department of Architecture at Tsinghua recently discovered her unfinished manuscript entitled An Initial Study of Dunhuang's Border Ornaments.
他说：“你看，我们中国历史这么长，我们已经把中国的图案要汇集起来，中国传统5000年，那不得了。”我说：“是。”他说：“我们做计划。”他说：“莎娜，这个你最会了，从敦煌的东西做起，历代的。”
60 years ago, Lin Huiyin, who had fallen in love with the art of Dunhuang, brought Chang Shana, a girl who seemed to be linked by fate to Dunhuang, to the newly established department. Chang Shana was the daughter of Chang Shuhuang, the guardian of Dunhuang. During the anti-Japanese war, she had gone with her father to the sand-covered, desolate wilderness of the Gobi Desert to protect Dunhuang. Thus began her path toward becoming an artist. In 1950, Chang Shana ended her studies in the U.S. and returned to China. An exhibition about Dunhuang art that embodied her father's numerous efforts was being held in the Forbidden City. Liang and Lin, fascinated by the art for a long time, paid a visit to the exhibit.
完了，我爸爸就说：“你好好陪陪，梁伯伯啊，他们身体不好。你刚从美国回来，他们从前也是在美国待过的。哎呀，我看着印象特别深。梁先生比我想象的要矮，我原来想的一定跟我父亲一样高高大大，矮有点驼背。然后林先生呢，他不是肺病嘛，肺结核一般不出来，但是在那个时候到午门城楼上，觉得一步一步走的，没有电梯，也没有什么，都得一点步行，慢慢的走，我就陪着上去。哎呀，我看着梁先生和林先生看了那个临摹品啊，惊呆了。哎呀，我说他们看了又看，他们两个之间交谈，有几幅画是我画的，说，莎娜，这是你临摹的，你当时怎么理解的？就问我，我就说，哎呀，我印象挺深的。
After several days, the father told his daughter that Aunt and Uncle Liang had decided to ask Shana to join the newly established department and work as an assistant teacher.
我受宠若惊，我说我怎么了？都傻乎乎的，什么不知道，他吧，完了他已经有想法了。
Their first line of work was to restore Beijing's cloisonné art scene, which was on the brink of collapse. Traditional palace utensils had become valuable pieces of art in their own right, and the establishment of the academy was part of what Liang Sicheng referred to as his system of architectural studies. In addition, it also established architectural, urban planning, and gardening groups. The new academy was beginning to take form.
哎呀，那他一到了激动工作，先是拼命的，完了以后就歇了，就不行了。完全他这身体，他其实要真正养病，他不至于那么早，55岁就走。
Everyone whom we interviewed said that they remembered Lin Huiyin as a sparkling and charismatic person. Only the members of her own family presented a very different picture.
人家说林徽因是个什么美丽的女子，什么这些，是个诗人，美丽的诗人什么。但是对我来说，母亲是一个长期卧病的病人，而且有的时候是脾气很急躁的。
In the early 1950s, after their daughter had gone south to join the army, and their son was staying in his dormitory to study, Lin Huiyin would often rent a tricycle and visit Liang Sicheng's younger sister, Liang Sijong. They had both studied in the United States. Liang Sijong, who graduated from Columbia University with a degree in library science, was working in the library of Yanjing University.
他每个礼拜都要来一次，他每次来都要给我买冰棍儿，他就特别知道我特别爱吃冰棍儿，他就在那儿使劲端详我吃冰棍儿。他就说，他跟我妈妈说，我就喜欢他这个胖劲儿，因为我觉得是不是我二舅妈自己比较瘦。然后他就跟我妈妈聊天。两人常常用英文交谈。
In those days, Liang Sicheng would sometimes be taken home by his younger sister.
接下来就把他，我就记得一大堆东西，一大卷图，一大堆的图纸，还有他的那个图板，还有什么全都带着来。我妈妈不让他带，他说不行，我还是得那个做工作。
他们在一块儿的时候，我觉得也是一个我觉得好像是很好的一对儿。
我们把他两个人作为一个整体来看，学生的梁先不在的话，林先就代表梁先。我们心目中间的也确实感觉到他们两人，我们有时候说话都是梁林一起称呼的。
林先生常常纠正梁先生的发音太美国化，你英文应该是这样说的，怎么样，是这样的。而梁先生就要说到建筑一些东西，就是说实际的情况应该是怎么样的，是吧？而林先生更多的是从艺术角度来看问题。
In the summer of 1950, the first class of students graduated from the Department of Architecture at Tsinghua. Liang was traveling, so Lin Huiyin took a picture with all the students in the department. It was at this time that she took this group photo with the 7 students who were graduating. 50 years later, there was a reunion of the members of the first graduating class, and they took another photo. But this time, the woman in the middle is Lin Huiyin's daughter, Liang Zibing.
冒着雷雨和酷热，跨过高山与河流，徒步跋涉千里，直奔广州。
In the summer of 1950, a year after their daughter joined the army, her parents wrote her a letter urging her to stick to her agreement and return to Beijing.
就在这时候，我的父母老写信叫我回家，我跟我的思想是扭着劲儿来的。我当时想，我要下部队，你要让我回北京，而且当时部队正在进行一种当时我们进行一个叫做树立终身为兵服务的思想，就是让我们这些知识分子要有终身在部队里工作的思想。我觉得这个思想很好，当时我很愿意树立这个思想。
In the summer of 1950, Liang Zibing was sent back to Beijing, where she worked as an editor in Xinhua News Agency.
我就想，这下子回到北京，我妈应该是看到我应该是非常高兴了，非常愉快了，一定是热烈欢迎吧。但是我回到家看见他正在那全神贯注的搞那个国徽，设计那个国徽的图案。 当时我进门的时候，我觉得就好像我刚上街买了一颗白菜，或者买点什么，买了块豆腐什么，又回到家那样好，一点都没有这个热烈欢迎的意思。
In 1950, a year after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, with the combined efforts of dozens of designers, the national emblem was placed at the very top of the Tiananmen Tower. After New China was established, Liang Sicheng was also vice chairman of the Central Bureau of Reconstruction, responsible for creating a dormitory in Zhongnanhai and for the reconstruction of Huairantong. And he also held a post that he thought he must live up to, vice chairman of the Urban Planning Committee of Beijing. One month before the liberation of Beiping, Liang Sicheng compiled a list of all the cultural relics in the city, commissioned by the PLA as it was about to attack Beiping. Only several months later, along with other teachers from Tsinghua, he once again was asked by the new government to create a list of important national architectural relics. They used the results of over 20 years of study by the Institute. The list included 500 to 600 ancient architectural units from 22 provinces and 146 townships. The first city on the list was Beiping, described as the world's most well-kept and greatest medieval city, designed as one harmonious unit, balanced and symmetrical, truly without parallel in the world. After Beiping was peacefully liberated in January 1949, the central government and the military authorities, as well as the corresponding institutions, began to make their way back to the city. Every unit was eager to find a place to settle down, a situation that worried Liang Sicheng. On September 19, 1949, Liang Sicheng sent a letter to the mayor of Beiping, near Rongzhen. Dear Mayor General Nie, I am most honored to be a member of the newly created Urban Planning Committee of Beiping. I will do my utmost to be of service in the reconstruction of the city. As you have now come to lead us, I might present my humble and limited views as follows. In the reconstruction of this capital of our people, it is important that we make a careful start. Since an urban planning law has not yet been promulgated, I earnestly urge you, as mayor and leader of the municipal committee, to request that all public and private institutions always first consult with the Urban Planning Committee before erecting any new buildings. This is especially important in empty areas where no buildings currently exist, no matter how small or temporary the designs. If this cannot be done, the committee is good for nothing and should not exist.